You're giving me the sweetest morning love. Coming alive at the dawn of the day. What a fun way to start. A fun way to start the day.
DJs, spreading it as wide as you can, and hopefully something will stick. And you know, our first record, thankfully, I took it. The first person I wanted to get it in the hands of was Jazzy B, because I loved their nights.
Yeah.
And we were already regulars at Africa Center in Covent Garden.
Yes, yes.
And
yes. The legendary
you know,
Africa Center.
Yeah, it was a legendary club, and played a huge role in my life, you know. And if I hadn't been hanging out there, none of this would have happened, I don't think. So
okay. Well, I would like to think one as talented as you would have found his way eventually.
Well, perhaps, but it was so beautiful, and we used to. The vibe in that place was electric and very inspiring. So the music that we made, you know, was definitely inspired by that vibe. And it was the band we Joe and I called ourselves City Heat.
Right.
That started being played in clubs around London. We then got signed to Chrysalis Records. Danny D.
Okay.
Danny D signed us to Chrysalis.
Right. Okay.
So Danny, big thanks to Danny always for that original kind of impetus. And funnily enough, the boss of Chrysalis at that time was Peter Robinson, who's now pretty much retired, but he's the owner of Dome Records, and that's where my solo album came out.
That's right.
In 2017.
Right.
And a wonderful home for British soul music, Dome Records.
Absolutely.
Many great artists on there.
Absolutely.
And so, you know, I met him then. And then obviously I started working with Jazzy and those guys, Nelly and Karen, and things just exploded. And then, yeah.
Okay. So before we get to that magical conjunction of talents and what developed from that, how did you get into music production?
Oh, okay. That's a lovely question that you asked me there, Randall, because I have to give massive respect and gratitude to a person called Ross Anderson, who was a guy. I mean, it's lovely. We met, Joe and I met Ross Anderson on Clacton Pier, doing a BBC Essex Soul Night Out.
Wow. Okay.
Radio show. And this would have been 86, maybe.
Okay. Right.
And Ross had a studio in Kingley Street.
Right.
And
is that behind is it Regent Street?
Yeah.
Street? Right.
It's that road that leads up towards the Liberties Arch, you know?
Yes. Yeah. Okay, right. I know.
So Kingley Street basement studio was fundamental in my story, and then Ross was about 10 years older than me. And I mentioned him in the past tense because he's no longer with us. He died in 2017 of mesothelioma, which is the asbestos cancer, which is very quick. Once it's diagnosed, it's really difficult. It's pretty much over, you know. So that was tragic, but he left such a legacy of his own music, all the music we made together, all the stuff he taught me. And he was so generous with his knowledge, and he was a deep lover of reggae music and jazz.
Right. Yes.
And he exposed me to so much stuff.
Right.
And I learned all about production from him in the early days. Absolutely. And we co-produced together, you know.
Right. So, okay. So for those who may not know, what is music production? What do you do?
Wow. Well, I think it changes in different circumstances. Sometimes it can get blurred with the writing of music. I mean, if I'm involved in the writing of music with somebody, the production is starting immediately, because it's not so much like the old days where you'd write a song, although, some people do work in the old ways where you write a song and then you take it somewhere and do the whole thing.
Right.
With me, I work on the sounds and the whole sound very much right from the get-go, but that's technology and how we work these days. My partner, Jen, who's more in the folk and country alt country kind of vibe. She's a proper singer-songwriter, sits down with a guitar, writes a whole song with a guitar, and then I produce her records. And that is like working with a songwriter who has got the whole song written, but how is it going to, what's the bass going to do? What's the keys going to do? How the background's going to work? Is this the right speed? Should that be, should that section come there? Actually, maybe you should hold that section off. You know, a lot of arranging, production, how things are placed. So I think producing is a very, very wide, in music production, is a very wide area. And I think also very important as a producer to be very attuned to the artist or band you're working with,
right?
And you're trying to realize their best self. You know, you're trying to bring to the fore the best of that person or that band, and so that really, it's not just music. It's a lot about relationships and positivity and encouraging people to really express themselves, you know.
Excellent, good stuff. So if you can, what three qualities do you think, if you can give me three, if you can manage that, does a producer need in order to bring the very best out of a song and or an artist? What qualities do you need to possess?
I think you need to be, I would say probably right at the top of the list is you need to be a really good listener. You know, you need to be able to, I can, you know, I say this sort of humbly, but I honestly, I feel like it doesn't matter the quality of the demo of the song or whatever. It's whether I can hear if a song is working or not. And I've been at it for a long time now, so I guess experience helps. But you know, like you can hear when a song has something magical, and it could be the crappiest little demo, but the person's voice, the vibe, the chords, the way it moves, the connection in the song, the emotional connection is there, you know. And so being able to listen with a really open heart is very important. I think you need to know, I think you need to have, you know, that there are a lot of people, and I'm not, this is not meant to be a criticism. I think there are a lot of people who sort of imagine they are producers, but I think they are just sort of bringing what they do and slapping it on to whatever the person has got. They're not adaptive.
Right.
You know?
Okay.
That's another. I mean, that's another way in which music has changed. I mean, sometimes now, you know, it's more important in some genres who the producer is and what the sounds are like than actually what is that song any good, and you know, is the It's like you know, it's almost, and I think technology is somewhat to blame there, really, because, but I think, if you're going to make music that really lasts and stands the test of time, I think it's important to really sort of understand music and understand that, you know, that I'm talking about, you know, essential elements of music, how grooves work, how chords work, how the instruments work together, you know. And I think that's probably goes for all genres, really. I think that's what was so, let me go back to Sampha. That's what was so refreshing to see him perform the other day, because the musicianship on stage was stunning. And they were using a lot of technology, but it was still, the musicianship was out of the world, out of this world, and the sensitivity and the ebb and flow, the dynamics, you know, were really something. And it just confirmed to me, you know, those essential ingredients of music, dynamics, you know, chord sequences, interesting chords, interesting harmonies, rhythms, the understanding of how those things can all work together is really important. Not just, oh, I just do these kind of beats, you know. I
Okay.
don't know, man. I'm waffling a little bit, but
Not
those
at all, not at all. It's all
random thoughts.
no. It's all good, interesting stuff. So what do you place more importance on? Technical ability, great, understanding of music theory, or feel, you know, or an
Oh,
instinct for music, which some
yeah, no,
people have. Some people have, both. Some people have more of one or the other.
yeah, no, it's a good question. I think in the end, feel is incredibly important because I've met many wonderful players with technical ability that is pretty extraordinary, but they maybe don't really listen to much else that's going on at the same time. They're just there to sort of to shine themselves. Are you really attuned to what's going on around you?
Yeah.
So I think feel and being able to play with other people, the feel and getting, and if you listen to many interviews with I mean, I consider jazz musicians to be the best musicians on the planet, and any of those interviews with any of those folks, those classic people, will always talk about feel and the emotion and because it's like, I think you're not going to get off the starting grid if you don't have some technical ability. So you have to practice your instrument. You have to do, but if you slavishly follow that and just really, it's all about technical ability, you may well find yourself lacking in the ability to really play well with other people. So
Isn't
balance.
that what great jazz improv is all about? You get a group of very proficient people, but the greatest jazz improv is the feel in the space at that time, and everybody listening to each other and just letting whatever's inside come out.
And the sort of the way that, I mean, there's that beautiful clip with Herbie Hancock talking about one time he was playing with Miles Davis and he said, I played this chord and it was a really terrible clanger, it was awful. And he just wanted to crawl under the piano and disappear. But he said what Miles Davis did in that moment was quite extraordinary. He made my mistake the way forward. Wow. And he played something off of that chord that tells a lot about this sort of this mystical thing of feel and sort of if you're there to sort of help everyone shine and you have really good ability as well,
right,
you're free and open to really go to different places. And this is not only jazz, this can happen in all kinds of music.
Absolutely. And sorry.
No, I just think I love that story because it's sort of I mean, you don't get much better keyboard players than Herbie Hancock, and you don't get much better
that's
period than Miles Davis.
Absolutely.
But there you go. These guys sort of, and it taught Herbie as a young man such a lesson, that there aren't really mistakes. You gotta really, some things don't work, some things do, but even in the moment you can make something, you can shift, you can go all sorts of places.
And that, and if you happen upon what is wrong, then surely that's a gateway to what is right. So it's all relevant.
And boy, oh boy, I mean, how we learn from things that we learn from our mistakes a whole lot better than we learn from the things.
Hopefully. Sometimes I wonder with certain people, but I certainly try to. But yes, no, I understand that. Wonderful. I was going to say something, but it slipped my mind. I think it was regarding, if we have any younger viewers, people who are on their way up, I think it's incredibly important to emphasize, the importance of listening to what is great in order to then know what is great. That is something that on my journey, I've always sought to do and had an instinct for, even when I probably didn't know who a particular artist was. If I got the sense that they were important, I would listen to them, and that has only been of benefit to me. So in terms of who you were listening to, who made up your record collection as you were coming up?
Well, I mean, I mentioned that very important record by
Yeah.
George Duke and Billy Cobham, but I think sort of almost right at the top of the list
Right.
would be Earth, Wind and Fire and Maurice White,
Right. Okay. All right.
because somewhere along, not long after that time of discovering, you know, funk really and jazz funk.
Yeah.
I guess I was all. I mean, Earth, Wind and Fire were already having hits by then.
Right. Yeah.
But then I started buying their music and the albums, and I just immersing myself. And something spoke to me so strongly in Maurice's music. And then that's another beautiful garden gate opening to a whole other sphere of artists, you know.
Yeah. I mean, the production on the Earth, Wind and Fire records to this day is ridiculous, isn't it?
It's ridiculous. He inspired everyone after him, you know.